Welcome back to the third lesson of This Can Happen, Judaism's argument or perception for a better future, to look forward to a better future. Today is going to be an interesting topic. Today we will discuss, in continuation to last week, and I know a number of us have had some trouble with last week's class. It was somewhat over our heads, but today's class will be somewhat of a continuation of last week's class, but a little bit more understood, if I may. Last week we discussed the first week we discussed the physical changes of the world, the way the world is coming closer to a believable Mashiach reality. And last week we explained how the soul of Mashiach works, how really that was the purpose of the world from the get-go, and it was all part of God's master plan, this divine plan to have a dira batachtenim, a dwelling place in the lowliest of realms. And just to recap, I guess the general idea of what we spoke last week was that in order for the divine to create a physical world where we feel that we are entirely independent and we don't need God, where we feel self-sufficient, how was God able to do that? And so we explained the idea of tzimtzum, that the idea of tzimtzum was the concealment, the great concealment. In order for God to create a physical world, God needed to have this leveled concealment in order to conceal his divine presence, which is everywhere at all times, but concealed in a way that we don't perceive it. And if we don't perceive it, we can feel ourselves as independent beings. Once we feel ourselves as independent beings, now it's a challenge for us to get over that and understand that really what lies at the heart of the concealment, what's behind the concealment, is the divinity. And that's really our mission here in this world, to constantly reveal the divinity in the entire world. And so that concept is the concept of dira betachtenim, to create a dwelling place for the Almighty in this lowliest of worlds, in this physical, self-serving world, if I may. Tonight we will discuss how we do that. Sounds great, to create a dwelling place for the Almighty here in the lowliest of realms. So the question is, how do we do that? How do you and I do that? How do we accomplish this goal? In order to understand how we accomplish this goal, it's important to understand the difference between Mashiach and any reward really that we get from the Almighty for performing our mitzvahs, and any other type of reward we may receive for anything we may do. We enter a sweepstakes, we get a reward. We enter a competition, we get a reward for what we do. And then there are the rewards that we get for doing the commandments. And the greatest reward of all, the era of Mashiach. So we'll take a moment, and if you look on page 97, there's an exercise. Think about a mitzvah that you do regularly. And think about, why do you do this mitzvah? Jot it down on the paper, check off one of the boxes. You can circle a few of them. Why do you do whatever particular mitzvah you have in your mind? We'll get back to this exercise about halfway through the class. And this leads us to the topic of reward versus result. See, when we go through the Torah contains many passages that tell us that we get rewards for performing our mitzvahs. If we do X, we're going to get Y. If we do A, we're going to get B. This is what goes through in the Torah, and we see it in text 1, page 98. Is a quote from the book we just concluded, the book of Leviticus, a number of weeks ago. And the verse tells us, if you follow my statutes and keep my commandments and observe them, I will provide your rains in their proper time. The earth will give its produce, and the trees of the field will yield their fruits. So usually as we see these, it's a payment. It's a reward. You do something, God will reward us with all these blessings. But that's not really the way it works with mitzvahs. Obviously, it's a reward that we receive for doing the mitzvahs, but it's something that's much deeper. It's not just a reward of materialism that we get. It's not just a reward of spiritual types of reward that we get. The rewards that we get are not rewards. And it's a topic we've discussed in the past. We discussed it at length in last week's, in the last course, The Journey of the Soul. And we're going to just briefly go over what we discussed, that idea. The Tanya, which we read many texts from last week, and we're going to read a number of texts from it this week, it gives us an insight into what exactly a mitzvah is and the reward that we get from a mitzvah is. And we have that on text 2, page 99. Shmuel, the lawyer, can you read for us, please, text 2 on page 99?
Yes, I can, and I will. The ultimate perfection of the age of Mashiach and the resurrection, namely the revelation of the infinite radiance of God in this physical world, depends on our actions and our work throughout the duration of exile. For the reward of mitzvah is the result of the mitzvah itself. This is because with the performance of a mitzvah, one elicits God's infinite radiance so that it descends into and is integrated within the physical matter of this world.
Thank you. So what we have here is a number of important points that we touched upon last week. And those points that the Alter Rebbe is making in this text is A, that the world of Mashiach is the ultimate perfection of the world. That's the goal. That's where we're headed. That's the ultimate state of perfection. B, the second point that we made is that the era of Mashiach, yes, it's characterized by all sorts of material blessings, but ultimately it's the soul, the inner significance of these developments that's the reality of Mashiach, a kind of spiritual revolution. And as we discussed last week, it's not a new concept. Rather, it's the revealment of something that was always there, just concealed. And thirdly, a concept that we somewhat touched upon already, and that is that these ideas, be it the materialistic or the spiritual revolution and blessings that will come with the coming of Mashiach, are all achieved through our performance of mitzvahs. But there's that fourth final point that we're going to dwell upon. And that is this statement, which is actually a quote from the Ethics of Our Fathers in the Mishnah. The reward of a mitzvah is the result of the mitzvah itself. What is the Tanya telling us here? What the Tanya is telling us here is something very profound. Mashiach, which is the ultimate reward, is not just the reward for the mitzvah we do today, it's the result of the mitzvah we do today. I'll give you two scenarios. The first one is, someone goes to work at a sneaker factory. And they work hard for 20 years. They save up every single paycheck. They put a little bit aside. And after 20 years, they finally amassed enough and they go ahead and they buy their dream house that they've been waiting for. The house is the reward for their hard work and industry. They've worked hard, they've put things away, and now they've earned this house. It's not directly connected to their job. Then there's someone who goes ahead, goes to Lowe's, goes to Home Depot, buys a bunch of 2x4s, buys a bunch of siding, buys sheetrock, and buys lumber, and works slowly but surely to build his own house. The house isn't a reward. The house is the result of their hard work. When we do a mitzvah, it's like building that house. It's not like going to work and so we now have funds to go ahead and buy a house. It's building that house. Mitzvah creates the home for God. The reward for the mitzvah is the result of the mitzvah itself. You say the story of the barber shop. The barber has the priest comes and shows up at his doorstep, and he gives him a haircut. And the priest says, "So how much is it?" And the barber says, "No, you're a man of the cloth, clergy, I don't charge." All right, the priest leaves. The next morning, the barber comes to open up, and he sees a bouquet of flowers with a nice card. "You're a barber, thank you so much," signed, the priest. A few days later, the imam walks in, and he asks for a haircut. He gets a haircut. And he says, "How much is it?" And the barber says, "No, you're an imam, a man of the cloth. No charge." The next day, he has a box of chocolates at his door with a nice card thanking him. A couple of days later, a rabbi comes by, and he gives the rabbi a haircut. The rabbi says, "How much?" He says, "No, for you, it's free. Man of the cloth, a rabbi." The next morning, on his doorstep, there's a line of 10 rabbis. When it comes to the mitzvah, it's not a reward what we get from it. It's the result of our hard work. The mitzvah we do creates a dwelling place for the Almighty. How is that possible? How is that achieved? We discussed last week this idea that it's not that God removed himself, God forbid, from the place where he created the world. Rather, he's there in full force. It's just that his presence is concealed. He's present. It's not that he's absent. He's present. He's just concealed. And the degree of concealment varies. With the higher realms, we said, and where the angels are, the concealment isn't so powerful. Where we are, the concealment is the most powerful. What's the goal? The goal is to create a dwelling place for the Almighty in this lowliest world. What's a dwelling place? A home. When we're out in the public, we're not ourselves. We're somewhat putting up a show. We have to behave according to the societal norms wherever we are. We have to follow the rules. When it comes to wearing masks, some of us may be more comfortable wearing masks over our nose, above our nose, below our nose. We are vaccinated, we're not vaccinated. We each have our own rules, but we got to go, and wherever we go, we have to follow the rules where we go. We go into someone's home, we go to a black tie event, a white tie event. There's rules, there's regulations. A home is where we can be ourselves, fully ourselves. Exactly the way we are, that's how we can be. The only place we can be that way is in our home. That's what it means to create a dwelling place for the Almighty, a home for the Almighty. A place where God feels fully himself, where God is fully revealed. How do we get to that? How do we get to a place where God is fully revealed, even here in this physical world, where godliness is revealed? Wherever you look, you see godliness. How do we get to there? We're going to give an analogy, and this analogy we're going to take with us throughout the remainder of the class. On the screen, we have a picture of something. It's an object. Think about it for a moment. What is this object? What do you see? What is object A, let's call it? Now, before you answer this question, imagine that there are 3 parallel universes. It's getting a little abstract, but bear with me for a moment. Universe number 1, our world. Universe number 2 is exactly like our world, but there's one difference. There's no music in this second world. There's no music. No one knows music. No one sings music. No one understands music. No one knows anything. And then there's world number 3, where there are no people. Just woodpeckers. That's it. That's all there are in this third universe, just woodpeckers. Take this object and place it in each one of these worlds. So let's begin with the first one. We take this object and we place it in world number 1, the universe, our Earth, planet Earth. We place this object in planet Earth, and what do we see? A person walks by and says, wow, beautiful piano, magnificent. It's a Steinway, it's from 1879. It plays such a beautiful tune. It's been tuned every other month. A musician walks by, sits down, starts playing. A crowd gathers, beautiful music. Take this object and place it in universe number 2, the one where the music does not exist. People walk by. Wow. What do they think? It's an interesting piece of furniture. A little peculiar. It's shaped in a random way. Useless to a degree. I mean, you can place it in my dining room, put some picture frames on it. In most houses I've been to that have a piano, I mean, that's for the most part what pianos are for, just pictures. Right, no one, if there's someone a little bit more technical, they'd say, you know, this is some sort of machine that does something, but we have no idea what it does. Now take this object and place it in the third universe, the one where there are only woodpeckers. It's a piece of wood. They're going to climb all over it, start pecking at it, start eating it, start destroying it. But to them, it's not destroying. That's what it's there for. It's wood. It's meant to peck at. The object is the same object in each one of the 3 worlds. The perception is different. It's equally present in all worlds. The difference is the awareness of what it is. And in reality, it doesn't have to be different worlds. It's in our world. How does someone who listens to music see the piano? Someone who's deaf, God forbid, see the piano? And a woodpecker see the piano? It's not a piano to the woodpecker. It's just wood. It's just a piece to put some picture frames on it, or it's a beautiful piece that can create beautiful music. And so this difference, it's the same object, but the difference of awareness is very, very significant. You know, the math teacher turns to the class and says, if I have 5 bottles in one hand and 6 bottles in my other hand, what do I have? And a little kid screams out from the back, you have a drinking problem. It's all in the perception. In the first world, in our world, in someone who speaks music, it's recognizing its fullest potential. It's fully revealed. There is no concealment. This is a piano. In the second world where there's no music, it's concealed. For the woodpecker, it's entirely concealed. It's just wood. Our world is exactly like the piano. We can experience our world like a flock of woodpeckers. The only reason why we're here in this world is because it's a physical world, that there's food, there's enjoyment. That's what it's there for. Very superficial. It's just the wood of the piano. Then we're not so shallow. We're deeper people. We recognize there's some sort of purpose. We recognize there's something there, but we don't know what it is. We kind of ignore it to a degree. It's nice for the corner to put some picture frames on it. It's not your average piece of wood. There's something to it, but we don't know what it is. But then there's a third level, the musician, the pianist, who recognizes the beauty of this piece of furniture, of this wood, recognizing that the world we live in has a purpose, recognizing that the world we live in is a beautiful piano that's waiting to be played with as an instrument through which God chooses to express his goodness and perfection. Our world is that instrument. It's waiting for us to sit down and play it. How can we learn to experience the world as a piano? not just as a piece of furniture or a piece of wood? How can we recognize that the world we live in, how can we be that pianist who recognizes the beauty of a piano? How can we reveal what was there but we never saw it before? That is through the performance of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs enable us to reveal the piano that's in the piece of furniture, the piano that's hiding and concealed behind the wood. How does a mitzvah do that? Text 3. Roberta, can you read for us text 3 on page 101? You have to unmute first. There we go.
Page 101.
Yeah.
Through the performance of a mitzvah, a person causes a flood of God's infinite light to descend from above and be enclosed within the corporeality of the world, within an object that was previously under the dominion of and whose existence depended upon the spiritual forces that obscure the godly reality. This includes all things that are kosher and permissible with which a mitzvah is then performed. For example, the parchment used in tefillin, a mezuzah, or a Torah scroll, an etrog, citron, so long as it is not orlach, fruit from a tree first 3 years, which are biblically prescribed, money given to charity, so long it has not been dishonestly acquired, and similarly with other material things. When one uses these objects to perform God's mitzvah and thereby fulfills his expressed desire, their vivifying force ascends and is absorbed within God's infinite light.
Thank you. So now we're starting to understand how we reveal the piano through the mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, we're taking, what are we doing? We take a physical object and we reveal the divinity that's concealed within it. Right now, the computers we're using, tablets, cell phones, whatever machine we're using, when we utilize it for a mitzvah, the mitzvah of studying Torah, we are thereby removing the concealment that is there and revealing the divinity within this object. We're taking that piece of wood and revealing that it's not a piece of wood, it's a piano. It can play beautiful music. We're studying Torah from a physical object. A mitzvah accomplishes this goal of revealing the divine in the world in 2 primary ways, as we'll see from text 4, first half and the second half. Betsy, can you read text 4 for us, please, on page 104?
There are 2 aspects to every mitzvah. One aspect is the fact that with every mitzvah that we do, we will fulfill God's will. In this regard, there is no difference between one mitzvah and the next. An individual fulfills a mitzvah not because of its unique qualities and its unique effects, but simply to carry out Hashem's will. This aspect of the mitzvah is aptly demonstrated in the observation of Rabbi Shiner Zalman of Liadi, Likut Torah Shalach, whatever, that if we are commanded to chop wood, we would do it in obedience to the divine will, with the same enthusiasm as we fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. The second aspect of a mitzvah is that each mitzvah brings a spiritual refinement to the individual performing the mitzvah. Similarly, the mitzvah brings a spiritual refinement to the objects with which it is performed, and ultimately refines the world. The difference between these two elements is that with the first aspect, the specifics of the mitzvah are irrelevant. The specifics of the mitzvah are irrelevant. All mitzvah are equal, for they are all equally Hashem's will. By contrast, the second element highlights the significance of each mitzvah's specific details. For each mitzvah brings a dissimilar branch of spiritual enhancement to the soul and refines the world in a different way.
Thank you. So we have two aspects to a mitzvah. The first aspect of a mitzvah is that by fulfilling this commandment, we are doing the divine will. Makes no difference which commandment. Any commandment is fulfilling the divine will. Using the metaphor in the Tanya, if we were told to chop wood, which is seemingly a meaningless, menial job, we do it with the same enthusiasm as something as spiritual understood to us as tefillin, because this is God telling us to do it. It must be God wants it. This is fulfilling the divine will. But then there's the differences of the mitzvah. And that is that this mitzvah, the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, is affecting a certain aspect of the materialistic world, and therefore it has to be with these specifications. Just before sunset, not after sunset, God forbid. It should be one candle per person if able to, especially even children under bar and bat mitzvah, even girls from the age of 3 should light Shabbos candles. When it comes to tefillin, it should be black, it should be square boxes. These specifications of the mitzvah are there because it's refining a certain aspect of the world. These two aspects of every mitzvah, the double function, are really the two methods by which each mitzvah transforms the nature of the physical reality to create a dwelling place for God in this world. How is that? The first function, which is the idea of that by doing any mitzvah, fulfilling the divine will, that works hand in hand with the idea we discussed last week, that the world we live in, and world by definition, olam, like we spoke last week, world is a concealment. It's a concealment. And this conceptual reality, realm that we live in here in this physical world, is the ultimate concealment. It's entirely concealed. What does that mean? It means that it senses no higher purpose. It's all for the self. It's for self-enhancement, self-perpetuation, everything we do. We feel independence from the Almighty, entirely independent. Self-preservation is our goal. It's all about the self. And that's what the world really perpetuates. That is, in its perception, a sufficient purpose for its own existence and for everything it does. So the first function of a mitzvah is to penetrate this concealment. By God commanding us to do a mitzvah, what God is telling us is that we have a higher purpose. Beginning, middle, end. We have a higher purpose. We're not independent. We're not here for no reason. We're not here just to drink coffee and move along. We're here for a higher purpose. We have a goal. We have a mission. We have to recognize that we are the pianist. We have to recognize, to go ahead, that and realize that that wood that's sitting in our dining room isn't just wood for the woodpecker to enjoy or to put picture frames on, but it's a piano to play beautiful music. The world we live in and us who live in this world are here for a mission, to fulfill the divine will. And as we explained last week, what that accomplishes. And so that's the first idea of any mitzvah. It's fulfilling a mitzvah. Any mitzvah, doesn't matter the specifics, any mitzvah is fulfilling the divine will. And all mitzvahs do this equally. By doing any mitzvah, we are making that connection with the divine. By doing any mitzvah, we are stripping away at the concealment of this world and revealing the piano behind the wood, revealing the true purpose of this world. That's the first function of a mitzvah. The second function of the mitzvah is more detailed, as we explained in the text. That's the first purpose of a mitzvah. The first purpose of a mitzvah is to penetrate the concealment. That's the idea of a mitzvah. And it doesn't matter which mitzvah it is, because it penetrates the concealment. However, whichever mitzvah it is, it's penetrating the concealment. Then we come to the second purpose of a mitzvah. And the second purpose of a mitzvah is why it has its details. The second purpose of the mitzvah is the effect it has on the actual world. The elevation, the refinement of every single particular piece of the world, and that is done through each individual mitzvah with the objects the mitzvah engages. The piece of the world may be a physical piece. Say, for example, by putting on tefillin, we're elevating the physical hide of the animal. We're elevating the paint with which the hide is made black, and the ink with which the words are written. It can be a trait within our character, if we're loving our parents. It can be a talent we have, if we're painting for a synagogue. And it can be a natural resource, a cultural phenomenon. Whatever it is, we are utilizing that item, that idea, that character trait for something holy, thereby revealing the divinity within it, stripping away its concealment, and recognizing the piano, the beautiful instrument, the beautiful music, the divine music that it creates. Which is why, with regard to the second function, every mitzvah is different. Because each mitzvah engages a different part of our personality in a different area in our lives. When we observe Shabbos, it instills the awareness that the world has a creator and it has a purpose. It holds us back from becoming consumed by our job. When we perform the mitzvah of family purity, it enhances our marriage. When we perform the mitzvah of charity, it cultivates compassion for others. And it takes all these ideas, elevates them, refines them, and reveals the divinity within it. And that's why our sages declare in text 5, page 105, something unique. Quote from the Midrash. Does God truly mind if a person slaughters an animal from the throat or slaughters it from the back of the neck? Rather, the mitzvahs were given only to refine the individuals who perform them. What does that mean? When it comes to the mitzvah of ritual slaughter, kosher slaughter, the mitzvah tells us that if we want to eat meat, we have to slaughter in a certain way, in a specific way. With regard to the first function of the mitzvah, it makes no difference what the details are. If this is the detail that God wants us to do, this is the detail that we do, because any way fulfilling God's will is penetrating that concealment of this world. But with regard to the second function, the function of elevating the world as we know it, elevating a piece of the world, physical piece, refining it, the specifics do matter. Because the Torah is telling us, the Torah commands us to slaughter the animal in such a way, is because this is the most humane way to slaughter the animal. And this enables us to eliminate cruelty from our hearts and to ensure that our consumption of meat, of food, is done with mindfulness and sensitivity. Because that's a second function. It's all in the details. To elevate these details, the character traits within us, the animal that we'll be using for a mitzvah, and so on. That's why when it comes to mitzvahs, there are mitzvahs not just in one area of life, mitzvahs that are associated with the synagogue, or mitzvahs that are associated with our mind or our heart. There are mitzvahs in every single area of life and of the physical world. As it's expressed so beautifully in text 6 from the Midrash, page 107. David, Lewis, can you read for us text 6 on page 107?
Yes. God did not leave anything in the world without providing the people of Israel with the means of performing a mitzvah with it. A person proceeding to plow must heed, do not plow with the ox and a donkey together. Similarly, if one wishes to, though, do not sow kilayam, the hybrid plantings in your vineyard. Reap, when you reap your harvest in your field, leave any forgotten sheaves for the poor. Thresh, do not muzzle an ox while it is threshing. Knead dough from the first of your kneading bowl, separate from the challah, as gift to the priest. Remove eggs from a nest. Send away the mother bird. Slaughter a wild animal or fowl. Cover its blood with soil. Plant a tree. Observe its orla by abstaining from its fruit for the first 3 years. Bury a deceased relative. Do not mourn excessively by slashing yourself in grief. Take a haircut. Do not shave the corners of your head. Build a house. Install a safety fence around its roof. And inscribe these words on the doorposts of your home and on your city gate. Wear a garment that has 4 corners which shall make for themselves.
Thank you. So what we have here are 13 commandments that are associated with 13 various physical actions. Any area in life, we got a mitzvah for that. It's almost like when your insurance broker calls you and he's like, so do you need life insurance? No, I got that. All right, do you have term life insurance? Do you have full life insurance? How about a 401k? I can sell you car insurance also. How about we got insurance for everything. You want insurance for your foot? We got it for that too. You want insurance for your nose? We got whatever you don't need that. We got insurance for you. We got insurance for every single thing. When it comes to Torah, Torah tells us there's a mitzvah for everything. Because unlike the first function, which is just a general idea to permeate the concealment, the second function of a mitzvah is the elevation of the world. We can't just elevate one aspect of the world. Every single physical area of the world, even the sub-physical, if you will, our character traits and so on, every single area has to be elevated. And so there has to be a mitzvah in each one of these areas. And so what we have here is that by us performing the mitzvahs in this world, it transforms the world to a dwelling place for the Almighty. And how does it do that? As we explained, in a general way, every single mitzvah counteracts the inherently selfish self-perception of physical reality and reinforces the truth that it exists only to serve a higher purpose. And then the second function is in a specific way. Each mitzvah makes a particular part of the world more spiritually refined, more generous, more aware, more respectful, more loving, more connected, etc. And so now we see how each mitzvah, I'll stop for a moment for questions. So what we have here is this idea that We're elevating the world piece by each mitzvah that we do. So if each mitzvah elevates a piece of the world, how does it elevate the entirety of creation? After all, when we spoke about charity, only a fraction of the world's money is being given to charity. So that fraction is being elevated by being used for a mitzvah. How about the rest of the money of the world? Only a fraction of the world's parchment is being used for tefillin, mezuzah, sefer Torah. How about the rest of the parchment of the world? In our own lives, only a certain brain power of ours is being used for mitzvahs. The rest of it is being used on, reading the daily news, whatever it may be. Our time in the day, only a fraction of it is being used for Torah study or for doing mitzvahs. How about the rest of our time of the day? How do we elevate that for the fulfillment, for the world, to reveal the divinity within it, to refine it? The reality is that every single act we do is really a product of countless other actions. Every resource we utilize for the performance of a mitzvah is really the end product of countless other resources. And so when we use that end product, we are not only elevating the actual end product, we are elevating the entirety of the chain of resources that were utilized to create this end product. Here's a short clip that will give us powerful insight into this idea. And I hope my internet is strong enough.
Muster an army of workers, machines, factories, ships, trains, and endless natural supplies. What do you get? A pencil. In 1958, Leonard Read penned a classic to document the mind-boggling diversity of materials and skilled labors required for a single manufactured object. He detailed the production of a pencil, speaking in the pencil's voice. My family tree begins with a cedar of straight grain. Contemplate all the saws and trucks and rope and the countless other gear used in harvesting and carting the cedar logs to the railroad siding. Think of all the persons and the numberless skills that went into the fabrication of these logging tools. The mining of ore, the making of steel and its refinement into saws, axes, motors, the growing of hemp and bringing it through all the stages of heavy and strong rope. Reed describes railroad networks and communication systems that bring the logs to mills, and the millwork that produces thin slabs. He asks, how many skills went into supplying the heat, the light and power, the belts, motors, and all the other things a mill requires? Reed includes the workers who constructed the hydro plant that supplies the mill's power, trains that transport the slats, a factory that cost millions to erect and equip with brilliant machines that slit the slats and insert the lead, and the lead itself, produced by mixing graphite mined in Sri Lanka with clay from Mississippi and treating it with Mexican wax. The pencils receive 6 coats of lacquer and are labeled with carbon black mixed with resins. An eraser holder made of zinc and copper is attached, and black nickel rings are added. Finally, the pencil's eraser is a rubber-like product made with Indonesian rapeseed oil, Italian pumice, sulfur chloride, vulcanizing and accelerating agents, and cadmium sulfide. One pencil, millions of dollars, dozens of countries, thousands of miles. But we can add something radical that Reed never considered. What if this pencil belongs to David, who uses it for Torah classes? It helps him observe the mitzvah of Torah study. That changes everything. Divinity generated by his mitzvah illuminates his soul and body and elevates the pencil as well. That powerful godly light travels back along the pencil's production route, elevating the factory, railroads, minerals, investments, skills, lives, and all that Reed so vividly described. Think about that the next time you offer charity. Light a Shabbat candle or wind tefillin around your arm. With each mitzvah act, so much of this world is connected with divinity.
So when we're sitting here in front of the computer studying about Mashiach, it's the culmination of thousands upon thousands of people, of time, of actions, of our actions, of actions of other people who used to create these computers and these textbooks and everything that went into that and every component of it. And when we are utilizing that for the study of Torah, we're not only bringing the divine revelation to ourselves or to the book that we are using in front of us, but to everything along the way. And so now back to that question that we asked in the beginning of class. Why do you do a mitzvah? So the truth is, any answer you may have answered is true. So in essence, you could have answered all of the above. Or we can give a different answer, which is really, in essence, includes all of the above. In essence, it is the same answer, but it's much shorter. We do a mitzvah in order to bring Mashiach. And again, it's not a reward. Mashiach is the result of performing the mitzvahs. We mentioned earlier this idea that when we do a mitzvah, we're bringing Mashiach. And by us doing a mitzvah, we are becoming partners with God in the work of creation. And we discussed it somewhat at length last week, the idea of partnership. But this idea of becoming a partner in the work of creation is a very, very important idea when it comes to the concept of Mashiach. Let's look at text 7 on page 110. Here's an interesting quote from the Talmud. The Torah considers those who recite the passage of Vayichulu. Vayichulu is, and God completed the work of the 6 days. It's what we say in the Kiddush. And so the Talmud says the Torah considers those who recite the passage of Vayichulu during the eve of Shabbat prayers as if they have become partners with God in the work of creation. What does it mean to be a partner? Imagine two people who are working in business. One's an employee and one's a partner, part owner, a partner in the ownership of the business. Say it's a business of a sales business. They're both standing behind the counter. They're both selling the product. What's the difference between the partner and the owner? The partner and the employee. There are many differences. Superficially, they look exactly the same. Two individuals standing behind the counter. But if you look deeper, there's going to be a number of differences. You know, they say the story of a new CEO who was hired for a company. And he wants to show he means business, and he decides he's getting rid of all the slackers. He walks into one factory of the company, and he sees a guy leaning against the wall, and he walks over to the guy and he says, "Hey kid, what do you make a week?" Kid says, $600 a week. Why? He says, $600 a week. He takes out a wad of cash from his pocket. He hands him $6,000 cash. He says, "Here's payment for 10 weeks. Now get out of here. I don't want to see you ever again. No slackers are allowed in my business." The kid leaves. He's all proud of himself. He turns to the guy next to him. He says, "So tell me, what did that good for nothing do here in this company?" He says, "He was the pizza delivery guy. He was waiting for his tip." What's the difference between an employee and an owner? It's all different ideas. And what does it have to do with us? It has to do with us as follows. Last lesson we asked, why is Mashiach so fundamental to Judaism? And the answer, as we have seen, is that Mashiach is much more than just the hope that things will get better. Mashiach is the very purpose of Judaism. It's the goal that we're headed to from the moment of creation. It defines everything that we're doing and why we're doing it. Every time we do a mitzvah or do anything that will enable us to do a mitzvah, we're creating the reality of Mashiach. So theoretically, we can do things without knowing why we're doing them. Perhaps it's enough to know that God commanded us to do these commandments, and that's why we're doing them. Maybe we don't need to know what the objective of the actions are. But let's go back to the analogy of business. You have Microsoft, a major corporation, and you have people, all different types of people are working there. There's the high-level CEOs, the low-level cabinet members, and we have all different types of people that work there, from the janitors, the people that serve coffee, and you have the graphic designers and the interior designers and the builders of their buildings and so on and so forth. What's their mission? To do their job and to do it really, really well. Do they need to know the mission statement of Microsoft? Technically, no. The guy just needs to know he's got to come in and design a beautiful office and leave. But every company hands out a pamphlet to all their new workers. And in the pamphlet, it has the mission statement of the company. Why is it important that they know the mission statement? Because when they know the mission statement and they care for it, they're motivated by it to make sure that their aspect of that contributes to the mission statement, to the completion of the mission. It's important that even the low-level employees know the mission statement of the company. The same is true when it comes to mitzvah. Here's a beautiful text 8 explanation on this idea, on how this business idea expands into and is expressed also within Judaism by Rabbi Yoel Kahn. May you live and be well. He's the lead expert on Chabad philosophy. He lives in Brooklyn. I grew up a few houses down from his home. And here's a great, he puts it in wonderful words. Text 8. Let's see. Leah, can you read for us text 8, page 112?
A Jew can argue, practically, why is it important for me to know that the redemption will arrive someday? I need to do my work and fulfill that which Hashem instructs me to do. It's not my business to know or be concerned with the greater objectives and the results of my service. The fallacy of this approach should be self-understood, but here's an illustration. Imagine a soldier is in the midst of battle, standing up and saying, it's not my business to know why my commanding officer gave me an order to fire my weapon. All that is important is that I meticulously follow the orders handed down by the chain of command. The fact that my actions impact the outcome of the battle, causing the enemy to retreat and bringing my side closer to victory, is irrelevant to me. I just need to shoot my rifle. This soldier, even if he dutifully executes every order he is given, will lack morale and passion. Moreover, without a doubt, no one degree or another, it will be negatively impact his performance on the battlefield. The same is true regarding our service of Hashem through Torah and mitzvah observance. We cannot claim that it is not our concern whether or not our service affects the long-awaited victory. We must know that there is a campaign underway and that it is our mission to bring it to its successful conclusion. We must be keenly aware of the reality that with each additional mitzvah, we reveal more godliness in this world, thereby moving a step closer to the ultimate triumph.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we have here is a difference between an employee and a partner, or within employees as well, is that the employee recognizes the mission statement, understands it, feels it. It's going to be much different than if they don't. How much more so when it comes to a partner, an owner? They're focused on the mission statement. It's not a job description with a mission statement behind it. It's the mission statement that they're headed towards. then there's a deeper difference between the two. And that is touching upon the idea that we spoke about in the beginning of the class. The employee mentality is the reward. They're coming to work in the morning because they need to get paid. They need to support their family. The partner is there for the results. The partner is personally invested in that goal of the enterprise and regards every single aspect that they do as something that furthers that goal. The employee, it's just to get a paycheck. When we come to Torah and mitzvahs, we can have the same attitude. We can approach Torah and mitzvahs with an employee attitude. Torah is a list of rules and regulations, or even if you want to go deeper, there's something in it for me. It's a benefit for me. It's something good. But that's all it is. It's the reward mentality. Or Torah tells us, no, it's not the reward mentality. It's the partner mentality. Judaism isn't about the reward mentality. As a matter of fact, the sages tell us that when we perform a mitzvah, we shouldn't do it for the reward that it will give us. It will give us a reward, but that's not why we're doing it. Why are we doing it? It's a partnership with the Almighty in the work of creation. Because by us doing a mitzvah, we're revealing the purpose of the world. We're tearing back that concealment and revealing the divinity. And so when we perform a mitzvah, and we do it because we see Mashiach as something that's happening as a result of everything, every one of our actions, that intensifies the sense of partnership and ownership of the mitzvahs that we do. But then there's something even deeper with a partner mentality. Let's look at text 10a, b, and c. Something uniquely different about Mashiach than the rest of the 13 principles of faith. As we mentioned last week, the 13 principles of faith, the 12th of which is Mashiach, but there's something that's markedly different about Mashiach than the other 12. Page 116. The 12th foundation of Jewish belief is the era of Mashiach. That is, to believe and affirm that he will come and not to think that he will be delayed. In the words of the prophet Habakkuk, if he tarries, expectantly await him. That's from Maimonides on his commentary on the Mishnah, and then Maimonides in his book of laws, 10b. Anyone who does not believe in Mashiach or does not expectantly await his coming denies not only the other prophets, but also the Torah and our teacher Moshe. Text C, the quote of the Animamim from the prayer book, I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach. Although he may tarry, I expectantly await his coming each day. What's the common theme in these three texts? It's fundamental to Judaism, not only to believe in Mashiach, that Mashiach will eventually come, but rather to anticipate his coming every single day. And the implication is that a person who believes that Mashiach will come someday, but does not expect and anticipate that it will happen today, is lacking something fundamental in what Judaism is all about. And along these lines, the Talmud tells us a fascinating story, text 11. Brigitte, or David, whoever is there, can you read for us text 11 on page 119?
Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi met with Elijah, the prophet, and asked him, when will the Messiah come? Elijah responded, go and ask him. Where is he located? At the gateway of the city of Rome. By what sign can I recognize him? He's sitting among the poor who suffer from illnesses, All the others untie all their bandages at once, and then rebandage all their wounds together, whereas he unites and rebandages each wound separately, thinking, perhaps I will be needed immediately to bring the redemption, and I must not be delayed. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi went to him and greeted him, peace upon you, my master and teacher. Messiah responded, peace upon you, son of Levi. Master, when will you come? Today. Rabbi Yeshua came back to Elijah and complained, he lied to me. He told me that he is coming today, and he didn't come. Elijah responded, this is what he told you today, if you will listen to his voice.
Thank you. So fascinating story, I'm sure it raises many questions. Who's Mashiach? Why was he sitting at the gate of Rome? Why does he have all these bandages? Those are all very, very good questions. We are not going to address them at the moment. But what we will address is the story in its entirety. What was the question? What was the story in short? There's this great sage who went to ask Mashiach when he's arriving. So when are you coming? We're waiting for so long. And what did Mashiach answer him? He's coming today. The day passed, he didn't come. The sage went to Elijah the prophet and said, Mashiach lied. He told me he's coming today. So Elijah responded. He was quoting from a verse. The verse in Psalms chapter 95, today, if you will listen to his voice. Why didn't Mashiach give him a simpler answer? Why didn't Mashiach just say, Mashiach will arrive when we listen to God's word, when we listen to God's voice, when we do what God wants from us, that's when Mashiach will come. Why did he give him this trick answer today? Mashiach wanted to impress upon Rabbi Yeshua and on us this exact idea, that the true answer of when Mashiach coming, it always was and it always is today. Because we should await his coming every single day. It's a most fundamental aspect of Judaism. Fully expecting that Mashiach and redemption will arrive immediately. It's only in retrospect, if God forbid Mashiach hadn't come that day, that we resort to the explanation that we need to do more to fulfill God's voice. And Mashiach himself shares this mindset. As we see in the first part of the story, that he was untying only one bandage at a time as opposed to all the others, because he anticipated God calling on him at any moment to come and redeem the Jewish people. Is that a realistic expectation? Is that realistic to expect from us to await his coming every single day? Especially in light with what's going on around us, we think, hey, maybe it's not something, it's nice to believe in it, but it's not something that's realistic that we can expect his coming at any moment. Yet we say that this expectation or this feeling of expectation is supposed to be and is a fundamental aspect of Judaism. How is that possible? And this is where we get to the third aspect of the difference between an employee mentality and a partner mentality. A partner lives and breathes the mission statement of the enterprise. A partner is invested personally in the result of their efforts, not just doing their job. But most importantly, a true partner is that they believe in the success of the endeavor. Of course, the employee wants the endeavor to succeed as well. He needs a paycheck. But he's not invested in that success. He doesn't truly believe it. A partner truly believes in the success of the endeavor. When we perform a mitzvah, and we understand that this mitzvah is, the result of this mitzvah will amount in the coming of Mashiach. We are a partner in creation because we know we are invested in the success of the endeavor. We know that the endeavor will succeed. Either because in a more simplistic way, how do we have that knowledge? Because God said so. This is the purpose that why God created the world. And if God created the world for this purpose, we know that it's actually going to happen. Because if God says that this is what's going to happen, we know that it's going to happen. But even deeper, And it goes back to what we've been discussing this class and the class before. What's the problem that we have with this expectation? The problem we have with it is look at reality around us. But what is reality? What is the true reality? The world, by definition, as we explained, is a concealment of the true reality. What we experience, what we perceive as the reality is the concealment, is the facade, is the smokescreen. It isn't the reality. The surface reality is flawed. The inner truth, as we explained, is the divine spirit that's hovering over the waters, is Mashiach, is revealed divinity. That is the true reality. That's what's really there all around us. It's the piano that plays that beautiful music. All that needs to happen is for one person to sit down and start playing that music. And wow, it's not just a piece of wood for the woodpecker. It's not just a nice piece of furniture in the corner to put the picture frames. It plays and produces such beautiful music. The reality around us, we may perceive it, but our perception is just the concealment. And so what we have is the partner mentality, what we ought to have. This idea we're certain of, and we anticipate the success of the endeavor. We're partners in the divine creation, as the sages tell us, by performing the mitzvahs. And so what we have here is this idea of living a different reality. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the class, in answer to Shmuel's question from last week about our ancestors, our patriarchs, they spoke to God, they didn't have the concealment, which is true, because they saw that reality. They lived that reality. They lived in an entirely different realm than we're living. Perhaps we can say no person in recent memory lived this reality as powerfully as the Rebbe. The Rebbe's every address, every talk, every letter, every initiative, every single idea was saturated with the immediacy of the redemption and of the coming of Mashiach. The Rebbe lived this reality. I will conclude with text 13, which is a very interesting and powerful statement from the Rebbe, a talk from 5744, 1984, where the Rebbe addresses in third person his seemingly obsession with talking about the coming of Mashiach. John, can you read for us, it's a little bit long, but can you read for us text 13 on page 126? You have to, sorry?
Okay. Did I unmute?
Yeah.
Hearing? Okay. We have been discussing the redemption and the era of Mashiach. Some in the audience are genuinely astounded at this, although for obvious reasons they do not openly voice their amazement. How can an individual appear in public week after week and repeatedly and unceasingly discuss a single subject, the coming of Mashiach? Moreover, this individual emphasizes that he is not merely discussing the published Torah materials on this topic, rather that he is discussing our righteous Mashiach's actual coming in our tangible reality here on physical earth. And immediately on this very day, Shabbat Parshat Pinchas 5744, this individual further instructs others to sing on each and every occasion, Sheri Bonem Beit HaMikdash, may the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days. And he points out that speedily in our days does not refer to the very near future. It means quite literally, speedily, today. Certainly, every Jew believes that Mashiach can come at any moment, in keeping with one of the fundamentals of the Jewish faith that states, I await his coming every day. Nevertheless, they wonder, how is it justifiable to discuss this topic without let-up and to emphasize on each occasion that Mashiach can come at that very moment? Is it not rather challenging to expect people to relate to Mashiach's imminence as if it were a tangible fact of our reality? So why does this individual speak incessantly about this on every occasion and with such single-minded intensity as if to forcefully ram the idea into the minds of his listeners? Their conclusion is that all this is a beautiful dream, and as we recite in our prayers, may all my dreams be positively fulfilled for me and for all of Israel. Nice, but not realistic. If so, they claim there is truly no point in discussing one's dreams with such length and with such frequency. The truth, however, is precisely the opposite. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi delivered a discourse based on the verse, when God returns the exiles of Israel, we shall be as those who have dreamed. He explained that our current state of exile is comparable to a dream, because in a dream, one's sense of perception can tolerate the most contradictory and irrational things. In other words, our current reality is a dream, whereas the word of Mashiach is our true reality. In a single moment, the situation can be reversed from one extreme to the other. We can awaken from the dream of exile and enter the true reality, the actual state of redemption. If so, each and every individual present in this room certainly has the ability to make the redemption come immediately, not tomorrow or in the near future, but right now on this Shabbat, Parshat Pinchas 5744, before we even have a chance to recite the afternoon prayers. Simply stated, at this very moment, we open our eyes and see Mashiach in the flesh with us here in this room.
Thank you. So conclude.
Lesson 3. Superhuman versus superhumans. 1. The purpose of creation, according to Chasidic teachings, is God's desire for a home in our material world and corporeal reality. 2. The physical world is referred to as the lowly world because it obscures the truth that God pervades every aspect of existence. Making the world a home for God means to penetrate this concealment and transform physical reality into a place that expresses the divine goodness and perfection. 3. The messianic world is not only a reward for doing mitzvot, but is the actual result of these actions. A mitzvah transforms the object with which it is performed from a self-defined existence into an instrument of God's will. In addition, each mitzvah makes a particular part of the world more receptive to spirituality, bringing it one step closer to expressing the divine goodness and perfection. 4. The mitzvot directly engage with only a small percentage of the physical universe and of each individual life. But each mitzvah action is the product of countless other actions and processes. In this way, the whole of creation is ultimately transformed. 5. The sages teach us that by doing mitzvot, we become a partner with God in the work of creation. There are a number of distinctions between a partner mentality and an employee mentality. A. An employee is driven primarily by his or her job description, whereas for the partner, the company's mission statement is the driving force. An employee is motivated by reward, whereas a partner is results-driven. C. A partner is confident of the success of the enterprise. 6. The 12th foundation of Judaism, by Maimonides' count, is not only the belief that Mashiach will come, but also the daily anticipation of the redemption. When we understand that the true nature of reality is the divine goodness and perfection, the expectation of Mashiach's imminent coming is more realistic than the concealment that obscures this truth.